In my classroom, I only have three ELLs. They speak Spanish and English at homes, and they're bilingual. My school doesn't have many ELLs or many immigrants, and they stay with me for most of the day unless they're going to PE or fine arts, or if they qualify for resource teacher or speech. Um, my three student ELLs are level 4 on the WIDA, and at my school that means they don't get pulled out for extra support. My three ELLs are very high in everything. One of them is a little bit low in reading, but otherwise they're one of the top ones in my class. And on a typical day, we start off with pretty much a nonverbal math computer program. Then we go into our language arts program, which includes small groups and reading text together and learning about text structure. We then usually have recess. We come back in for math, have a video on the math, work in the math book together, and then work on homework individually where they can ask me questions. When they come back from lunch, we have read aloud, and then we work on writing for half an hour, which can be working on grammar or writing to a text. After that, we have history and science where we take notes, do experiments, and watch videos. After recess, I'm trying to do small groups for math. Then we pack up, and it's the end of the day. In terms of grouping, for my small groups, I do ability grouping. In the classroom, they're in rows, but each two rows is a group, which they can earn points together. The administration has a very limited role in what they do in terms of helping with my ELLs. They look at the scores that my students have and are making sure I'm doing interventions for my lower students and seeing if they need to qualify for extra help outside the classroom. For parent-teacher conferences, all of the parents for my ELLs, they all came, and they were able to speak and understand when I talked to them in English. There wasn't a translator, and the student didn't translate for them. My first situation is something I hear all the time. The students understand that we can use pronouns. When we're talking about ourselves, we can say I or me, depending on the situation. However, they have trouble deciding when they should use I and when they should use me. So the example that I heard last week was my sister and me get $1 for every A we get from my grandma. So the first thing is that this is ambiguous. We don't know if they're getting the dollar or the A from their grandma. From the context, we can understand that I'm giving the A and their grandma's giving $1. The second thing is that they have an issue with their pronoun. Since it is a nominative pronoun that they need to be using, my sister and I. It's the subject. Instead, they're using the accusative form me, which is usually at the end of a sentence. Since they're talking verbally, a lot of times you don't stop to think, okay, am I saying this grammatically correctly? It's more, does it sound right? At this point, they haven't had enough experience to understand that my sister and me at the beginning of a sentence shouldn't sound right. My second one is we were talking in science and writing in science about the Earth's plates. So she wrote, how this happened, well, the Earth has this layer called the crust. The Earth also has tectonic plates. Earth's water and land lays on these plates, which means they are constantly moving. So as you can see here, she understands what can be said verbally. All of this really could have been said verbally, and there wouldn't be much of a problem. But there are grammar problems, especially you can tell when they're written down. First of all, how this happened is just a fragment. It's not a complete sentence. There isn't a verb. You need the word did in there. And then the last sentence, which means they are constantly moving, you can tell she thinks it's a sentence because it could have a subject, they, and it has a verb, are, moving. However, it's actually a dependent clause and needs to be part of the sentence before. And so we can see that she's having trouble figuring out what exactly is a sentence, what is a dependent clause, what is an independent clause, and that even though it sounds correctly when we say it out loud, doesn't mean it actually is correct when we write it down. My third example is people are probably be nicer. We were talking about what the future would be like, and one of my students wrote this, and I'm not sure if she could actually hear the L in people, so it looks like she was just trying to write out what she thought, how you would say people. And then for the misspelling of the word probably, well, when you say it really fast, it actually sounds like probably instead of probably. So she misspelled that there. And then with nicer, she gets really close to the correct spelling. She knows that adding ER makes it a comparative word, so make it nicer instead of just nice. However, when you put those two, the nice and the morphemes together, you actually don't need the second E. She was struggling with that. You can also tell that she's actually understanding the future tense, like she's starting to grasp it. She doesn't quite have it. She knows there should be two verbs In this case, it should be will be, but instead she's using are be.